Michael to start your session.
Lovely, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday.
All right.
Not sure what the weather's like around the country, guys, but it's not too great where I am at the moment, so we're not missing out on too much by being here working on origami rhythms. What does that actually mean? Well, what we're doing again, guys, is looking at algorithms, some of the essential skills that are needed for anyone working in the gaming industry, be that a programmer, be that a designer, or be that someone that just generally problem solves as part of their working. We're going to be looking at writing and reading algorithms, but looking specifically at using origami as a means by which to be creative, learn some different shapes and animals that we can make, and go on to have a little think about how we can structure different algorithms as a result of these different activities that we're doing, okay? Now, I'm going to start simple, and we're going to work upwards towards some more complex types of origami. We're going to make a couple of animals. I'm hoping that towards the end of the session, we're going to get time to be able to work on making a pelican, which is a really typical piece of origami that lots of people often see. Hopefully that works for us, or sometimes you might refer to it as a crane instead of a pelican, but I'm hoping that we can work up towards making a crane, which is a really famous piece of origami. So just bear with and let's work through and have a look at how we can start applying sets of simple instructions in order to solve problems, in this case, making origami, okay? So guys, let's get started. Before we continue too far, guys, I'm going to go over the learning objectives for today. But before we continue, if you haven't done so already, could you just make sure that you've grabbed yourself some paper, just some A4 paper, if possible, rectangular paper. It doesn't have to be A4, any size really, but just make sure it's some rectangular paper. We might need 6 pieces of this, and a pen or a pencil, okay, so that you can actually take some notes and participate in one of the activities, which is designing an algorithm, okay? Now to go over our learning objectives, run away and do that now. You can ignore the learning objectives. If you haven't got that stuff, grab some paper, grab a pen. Whilst you guys are doing that, I'll just drill down through some of the learning objectives for us this morning. We're going to learn how to design and use flowchart algorithms, okay? So on session 1 on Monday last week, we were talking about algorithms and how we can use those as sets of instructions. Today, we're going to move on to look specifically at flowchart algorithms and how they're structured and how we can write them and how we can read them and how they're useful, okay? Again, flowchart algorithms aren't exclusive for programmers or games developers. They can be used in any industry, and they're super, super useful in order to kind of think about how you might approach solving a task or a problem of any kind, okay? The second learning objective today is to understand the core shapes that we use in flowchart design to make sure that when we do design our flowcharts, we're designing them according to what would be expected to be seen. That there's different shapes for different types of things within a flowchart, okay? And finally, we're going to learn to make a variety of origami models, okay, because that should be fun. All right, so just a brief second just to wait for those people that ran away to grab some paper and grab a pen or a pencil. You are going to need those things as we work through today's session, okay? So just a quick recap, and this is going all the way back to Monday from last week, and it's good to keep coming back to these things because it's by repeating these things that we can embed these things into long-term memory and learn. Looking at algorithms or recapping at algorithms is when we ask computers to do things, we use instructions that are specific and step-by-step so that they can perform useful functions, okay? Algorithms must be specific and they must be step-by-step. If you remember, we spoke about how computers and human beings make a great partnership because human beings are intelligent, but sadly we're incredibly slow. And therefore, if we can make our very fast but unintelligent computers do lots of the tasks for us in a specific and step-by-step manner, it creates a fantastic partnership, be that of designing computer games and becoming a games developer, or in any other industry that you might apply yourselves to when you're older as well. So having a quick think about some of the theory before we go on to the practical, make lots of lovely animals and different shapes. Flowcharts are graphical representations of algorithms. You may have seen them at school. For those people that are doing GCSE computer science or even systems in DT and electronics, you guys will have seen these before. They're graphical representations of algorithms. They show sequences in instructions in order. They show decisions where algorithms can branch or choose between two paths. And they show loops where algorithms have to repeat steps. And we did speak about last week through design how we can use iteration and repeating steps in order to come up with fantastic designs. Worth taking note of, and if you've got your pen, it would be nice just to draw these three shapes out on your piece of paper, if possible. But flowcharts are essentially made out of different types of boxes, and the three most fundamental types of boxes are included on the screen now, okay? We have terminators. These just go at the start and at the bottom of a flowchart. One will say start in it at the top, and one will say end in it at the bottom. And they're really, really simple just to get down that shows the person that's reading your flowchart where we begin, where we end, where it comes to a full stop, okay? The middle box is the most fundamental of all of these boxes. This is called a process box, okay? This shows where stuff happens, okay? If something needs doing, it's in this box that something gets done, okay? Where we actually commit to doing a process, where we process some information, or where we process a particular job, okay? And then finally, looking at the rhombus box on the far right, this is a decision box, okay? And it's by using this type of box that we can generate our loops. This is essentially a box to ask a closed question and to show if there's a yes answer from that question, in which direction you go, and if there's a no answer, in which direction you should go, okay? And it's with these three boxes that we're going to practice writing our flowchart algorithms today, guys, but also whilst building our origami. We'll see how we go. So what I'd like to do to start with, guys, is just get straight into the origami. I'd like us to start by constructing a boat. Now, I've made a really specific point today of not practicing these beforehand. So I'm going to be in the exact same boat as you guys at home, and I've not done these yet. So we're in it together. But we're going to follow this algorithm on how to construct these things in order to create this boat. So let's start on the very simple, step-by-step and specific instructions working through this algorithm and see if we can create this boat, okay? Now, I'm aware that you guys can see what's on your screens, but what I'd prefer, at least to begin with, and then I'll come back to this screen, is that you guys are watching what I'm doing on my desk so that you guys can just work through at the same time, and I can read you the instructions at the same time as show you the instructions that I'm going through on my piece of paper in front of me, okay? So the first step, guys, is to take your rectangular A4 piece of paper and to fold it in half lengthways. Okay, you don't have to be particularly neat, but there you go, fold it in half lengthways. That was the first step, to fold it in half lengthways, okay? And then you can open it up again, and this time fold it in half the short way, or downwards you might describe, because it's torn and upwards. So here we go. Again, folding it in half the other way, so you end up with a cross in the middle of your paper, okay? So you should have hopefully something that looks like that. Now, what's next? Folding it back down again so that we've folded it the short fold. What we're going to do this time, guys, is we're going to fold each of the top corners where the crease is. So not on this bit at the bottom, but where the crease is at the top, we're going to fold that down as step 3. And we're going to fold it down into the middle line that we've generated to show us where the middle of this this piece of paper or card is. Okay. Let's bring that one down as well. I've never made a boat before, actually, so hold on to these and see if you can get them to actually float and see if they actually go anywhere for you guys, okay? So just to recap, guys, I've just taken the top corners that are folded, so not the open bottom section, but the top that's been folded, and I've folded them down onto this line in the center, okay? Then we need to then take these layers at the bottom and fold them up. Like so. So I'm just going to take that section there. I've just folded it up all the way up to where those creases are from these two folded down corners. I've just creased it up towards that, and then I'll do the same to the other side as well. Okay, I must do the same to both sides. There we go. And just to give you a quick overview of where we are so far, because you may have missed an instruction. Again, I'm just going to share my screen just to show you where we've got to. We've done section 1, which is folded the rectangular piece in half long ways, and then we've folded it in half short ways. Step 3 was bring the 2 corners down to this central line. And step 4 is fold both of these bottom sections up. Okay. Now on step 5, it's asking us to pull outwards. Pull these 2 corners, and again I'm going to show you on the visualizer because it might be a little bit easier for you to see. I then pick it up, open it from the bottom, and pull it outwards like this. There we go, and then you can just kind of crease those behind like that. So now I've gone from that, pulled it outwards that way. Okay, so that was step 5, pull the sides out and flatten. Now, what we've got is a situation in which we can then fold these again upwards. Okay, so we've got this flappy bit at the bottom now. I'm just going to fold that all the way up to the top again, almost in half. Okay, so you're creating all of the weight of the paper is at the top. And I'll show you again on this side. We've got this shape where you should have this kind of V at the bottom. I'm going to fold it upwards to the top in order to create this right angle triangle shape. Okay. Right, and then what we have to do is similar to what we did last time. We've got this right angle triangle now because we've folded both of these sides upwards. I can open this up and pull it now the other way. Okay, we're nearly done, guys. Okay, and again, just to recap, I don't want anyone to be left behind or stuck. Let's just quickly have a view of where we are so far. So we have pulled the sides out and flattened. We've then folded the front layer on step 6 up to the top and then done the same to the back. And now we have pulled the sides apart and flattened it so that it looks something more like this. Now, step 8 is asking us to gently pull the top parts of the model outwards, making a boat shape. This is the kind of be all and end all now, guys. Okay, hopefully what you've got is a top section that looks a bit like that. We're just going to pull that outwards. Then fingers crossed, everything going well. Might need to fold some bits down as you do it. Hey! Oh, hey! You should be able to flatten that out, and now we've made a boat. Give it a kind of flatten down. Yeah, I think that worked. I can see how this works now. It's actually really quite watertight as well. So if you were to now float that after this session, I think that would most likely work. Do we need to pull that edge up a bit? Yeah, flatten well to create the folds and then open out slightly, forming a boat shape finished boat. Boom. There's our first piece of origami today, guys. Okay, it should have a lovely looking boat like this, and that should actually float, shouldn't it? And that should be enough at the bottom to hold that upwards. We'll see. We'll see after the sesh. But good job, guys. Hopefully you were able to keep up with that. If you were not able to keep up with that and you're totally lost, don't worry about it. We're going to go on to do other forms of origami. This is just the first out of about 5 different types that I'd like to do today. And yeah, good start. Now, having a look on your screens, I'm going to share with you what this would look like as a set of steps if it was written as a flowchart. Okay, so let's have a look at those steps now written as a flowchart. What you can see on your screens, guys, is that at the top, you've got the start, and at the bottom you've got the end, and that's quite typical. That's what I said at the beginning, is what you're looking for with regards to having a terminator at the top, terminator at the bottom, showing you where you start your algorithm, showing you where you end your algorithm. Now, what is that first box that we see underneath the start? Well, it says, would you like to make a boat? You could answer true, or yes, you would like to make a boat, or false, or no, you would not like to make a boat. Okay. If you were to say false, is false that you'd like to make a boat, the instruction then would be, or the process then would be, don't make an awesome boat then, and it would go straight to end. However, if we were to say true, or yes, we would like to make a boat, it then starts giving us each of these processes in single boxes. Fold in half, then open, fold in half downwards, bring corners into the center line, fold uppermost layer upwards and do the same to the back, crease well, etc. Now, it's much, much more difficult to understand these instructions because they're not visual and I'm not walking you through. But hopefully, guys, what you can see at this point is that by using this decision box at the top of our flowchart, we can see that we can start making selections or decisions within this algorithm, whether to make a boat or not. Okay, we'll come back to having a look at another flowchart algorithm, but to begin with, what I'd like us to do is just create a hat, which should be ever so slightly easier than generating and creating the boat, actually. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm just going to share what I'm doing on my desk. I'd like you guys to grab another piece of paper because you're about to follow me through these steps as I explain how we can make a hat. Okay. So to begin with, and a bit like the first time round, to be honest, because we're making a nice template, or at least straight edges for us to then continue working with, we're going to fold this in half long ways against the longest line. Okay. And then open it back out again and fold it in half short ways, so that you've made a lovely cross, dividing your piece of paper up into 4 quarters equally. Okay, so we've got that fold there, and we've got this original fold that we made here. Okay. Now, bringing that back down again, similarly to what we did with the boat, we're going to bring down the 2 top corners again, like so. So please do it the exact same way that you did your boat last time. Bring down the top corner there, and bring the top corner here. And hopefully you'll have something that looks like that. Okay. Now, this is where this slightly differs this time around, guys. Whereas before we folded up the whole thing like that, we're just going to fold this section in half so that it just barely touches the bottom layer of that triangle that we've just brought down. Okay, so we're not going all the way up. We're just going to fold it in half so that this bottom flap just barely touches the bottom of this triangle here. I'll show you again on this side. Okay, and I'll just have to base that on the length that I've done the other side of it. Just fold that up so that we've still got this kind of rectangular area at the bottom, as well as our triangle on top. Okay, and then similarly to what we did with our boat, we're just going to then fold that up a second time round. We're just making a really strong base for this hat. And again on this side, guys, we're just going to fold that up one time there. Okay, so guys, in case, because when following specific instructions in order, it's quite easy to get lost, I'm just very briefly going to show you those steps again. We start by folding it in half lengthways, and then we fold it down on the short way. We fold both of the top corners in, the halves that are actually bound, so that these bits are open at the bottom. We then fold it once in half to fill that gap at the bottom, and the same on this side. And then we fold it one more time to go upwards. And again on this side, fold it one more time to go upwards there. Okay. Then, guys, what we've got is a hat. You can then open it from the bottom, pull it open so it's more like a pyramid, like a four-sided pyramid. And there we go. There's our hat. Slightly different to our boat. Actually, arguably a lot easier to make. And happy days, sorted. I'm just going to put that where it needs to go. And don't worry, guys, if yours doesn't look as good as mine, or if you don't look quite as good as me in your hat, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, I've been making these hats for a long time. Every time it rains, I'm making a hat ready to wear as well. So make your hat, pop it on your head, happy days. At least you don't look silly doing this lesson at all, okay? What I'd like to discuss next, guys, is a flowchart algorithm for how we made this hat, looking at some of the core principles of what kind of boxes might be needed in a flowchart in order to look this awesome, okay? So what I'm going to do this time, guys, is go back to my screen where you can quickly get another view of how to make this hat. Fold, fold, corners down, twice up at the bottoms, and then outwards to look epic. So what might this look like if we were to try and design this into a flowchart? Well, this time round, I've not come up with the selection or the decision statement at the beginning to say, would you like to make this hat or not? We're going to assume that you would because you're engaging with this algorithm. I've used the same instructions that we've just seen or I've just read, which is to fold in half and then open, to fold the top down to the bottom edge and crease it properly, fold the top corners down to the center line, fold the bottom edge, uppermost layer only, up to the base of the triangles, and then fold this part up once again. The question or the decision box I then ask is, has this been done to the other side? Okay. If the answer to that question is false, this has not been done to the other side, what we do in this case is we loop back to a previous instruction. We say fold the bottom edge, uppermost layer to the base of the triangles, and then fold this part up once again. And what I've created here, guys, is a loop. Okay, this loop is enabling us to then go back around and make sure that we've double checked and produced both sides of this hat. Why I've created iteration is to make sure that we're getting all of our tasks done, but not just asking you to simply repeat those tasks by rewriting them the same way, but again on the algorithm. Once we then come back down and say, has this been done to the other side? And the answer to that is true. We can then open up the hat to shape it and wear it and look awesome. Okay. So it's really, really important, guys, that what we've looked at so far are just kind of two examples of two flow structures of how we can start to design our algorithms. And I'd like us just to, for a second, take some notes and have a quick look at those two things once again. Okay. So we're not going to fold for this particular activity, guys, but I just want to outline three things that I really want you to take away, which are essentially the three pillars of algorithms. Okay, and we're not going to go into much detail here, but I'm just going to talk to you about what the three things are that make every single set of steps to every single solution of any problem, or for those of you interested in getting into games development, the three things that we can make any computer game out of. And those three things are sequence, selection, and iteration. And I've used some of these words before, so we're just going to quickly have a look at what they might look like. Well, in the sequence structure, guys, again, talking about algorithms broadly, a sequence is a set of steps which are followed in order to solve a problem. And we'll start at the top and we'll go to this instruction, then this one, and then this one. And what's absolutely crucial about sequences, guys, is that things are followed in order that we design them, okay, from start to end. Every single program inside a computer uses this fundamental principle to make any type of program, be that a computer game or anything else. And every single problem that you could ever solve must start at the beginning, working through to the end of that solution. Selection, on the other hand, is the opportunity for us to make a decision of some sort, okay? And that decision will look more like a rhombus, and there'll be a question in there, and there'll be essentially one of two answers. There'll be yes, and there'll be no, or there'll be true and there'll be false. And depending on if something was true, you might run one particular process, or if the answer was false, you might run another particular process. See if you guys can draw these out to get a bit of practice in writing your flowchart algorithms out for me, guys. Okay. And we're just keeping a very high level for the time being. We don't need to know what's inside each of these boxes, but it's really important that we know how to structure these different pillars of algorithms. So for selection, we make a decision in which something can be yes or it could be no, and then we end our algorithm. You can see that actually within the selection example, we're still using our principle of sequencing from start to end. And finally, guys, iteration, which would be the repetition of a particular set of instructions in order to solve a problem. Here, we may ask a question like, is it finished? Is it complete? Have we achieved our goals? Okay. And again, we're using a decision box in order to achieve that. But based on that decision is whether we continue to repeat and start all over again. So for example, on this design I've done here, you could say, have you completed your task? If the answer is yes, you can go straight to end. But if the answer is no, you might then want to travel back up and repeat a couple of the steps. And this would be repetition or iteration, the repetition of a particular set of instructions in order to solve a problem. Now, there's a really lovely real-life example of doing this type of thing, and it's simply counting in numbers. If I was to count the 5 times 10 table, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, what I'm doing each time, guys, is taking that number, adding 5 to it, reading it out. Taking the number, adding 5 to it, saying it out. Taking the number, adding 5 to it, reading it out loud, okay? And that's repetition. That is iteration. So these are the 3 pillars of algorithms or programs. And every single computer game that's ever been designed uses these 3 things in order to work. Sequences start at the beginning of the level of Super Mario and work through that level. Selection, has the player pressed A? If the answer is yes, make Mario jump. If the answer is no, just keep Mario where he is. Iteration, start with 1 life. Did Mario survive? Yes, then it's end. Did Mario survive? No, then start at the beginning again. Every single computer game ever generated is made out of these 3 pillars of programming. Okay, so let's continue, guys. Let's have a look at how we can apply these things to our own algorithms. Okay, I'm going to come back to my presentation and bring that back up to my face. You guys can see me speaking. What I'd like us to do now is have a little think about if we can start to build our own algorithm or our own flowchart algorithm to describe how to build a model airplane. Okay. Now, every single one of us at some point in our lives has made a paper plane. At this point in time, I'm asking you specifically to do so that we can think about exactly what is involved in creating it. Okay, so this is what I'd like us to do, and I'm going to start us off, but I'd like to model how I'd like you to answer this question, and then I'd like you to continue to go forwards yourselves to go through and finish this question off. Okay, so let's have a look. I've got my piece of card here. The first step for me in building a paper plane will be to fold my piece of paper in half lengthways. Okay, so on my algorithm, let's start. The first instruction can be fold paper in half lengthways. Remember to write your instruction before you draw your box, guys, because it might be difficult to fit your instruction after you've drawn your box. So I folded it in half lengthways. My next step is going to be to take the corner, the top corner of one half, and the opposite sides, and fold them down so that I create this kind of 45-degree angle or right angle triangle at the front of my paper plane. So my next instruction: fold the front, which it is, down at 45 degrees on each side. And I hope that is clear for my person that's going to be engaging with my algorithm to follow that instruction. Okay. And my next step, this time, it's not going to be a 45-degree angle, although any mathematicians at home which know what angle I will have folded this one at. But I'm going to bring essentially this line down to meet the base of my plane and do the same to the other side. You guys will know that if I've taken a 90-degree angle and folded that in half, which I did, I ended up with a 45-degree angle. So theoretically, for that next step, I'm using the same technique. Fold the front down at from a 45-degree angle. So half of that, I assume it's a 22.5-degree angle on each side. I'm going to stop there, and I'm not going to continue so you guys can just blindly follow me, because lots of you have got different methods for making your paper planes. But I would like to give you just a couple of minutes just to work through creating your own paper plane, which everyone should know how to do, and writing a flowchart algorithm to explain that process, demonstrating that you guys are able to write specific, clear, precise instructions for somebody to follow to make a paper airplane. Okay, and then we'll get on to making some more animals using origami. Right, so I've just added 2 more instructions for mine. That's end. And that's that. I finished mine, guys. I'm just going to show you that on my paper. So again, guys, I've just got a simple sequence of instructions here. Fold paper in half lengthways. Fold the front down at a 45-degree angle on each side. Fold the front down again at a 22.5-degree angle on each side. Fold the wings down, leaving 2 centimeters for the body of the plane. and then straighten up and throw with care. Now, I hadn't actually thrown mine with care, guys, okay? I'm not sure if you guys just heard me have a little laugh as I just thrown mine and it went straight into my pint of water. So yeah, that's a crash at this point. So, but I was able to make my airplane, and I was able also to create an algorithm to explain how to do so. So I hope what we've just taken from that activity, guys, is not to throw your paper planes into pint glasses, but also how we can create algorithms, again, from simple real life sets of steps, for example, from creating origami. Now what I'd like to do, guys, is go on to the next activity, which is going to be on creating a, I think we're going to make a frog this time around. So I've actually got a green piece of paper. So grab yourself another piece of paper. We're about to make another origami animal. So again, this one's a little bit more complex, although I'd argue it's still not as difficult as the boat. The boat was actually quite challenging, I found. What I'm going to do, guys, is work through this on my visualizer so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'll also stop at regular intervals so that you guys can just look at the instructions that are on your screen as well. So hopefully you guys can keep up with this and make your own frogs, okay? So what is the first step? Well, again, almost like every single thing that we've done today, we're going to start by folding our frog or our paper lengthways, okay, long ways, just so that we've got that middle section, okay, and then we can open it back out again. Just give it a good score so that stays there throughout the rest of our design. Next instruction's quite tricky, so I'm going to show you once of me doing this, and then I'm going to go back to the instructions so you can see it written down as well. But step 2 is to take that top corner of your piece of paper and to fold that down so that it meets the edge and essentially kind of creates a diagonal cross in the shape of a square. Okay, and then give that a good score as well, because it's this fold that we're going to use in a moment. Okay. Open that back up again, and now you should have something that looks like that. Bring down the other corner and do the same. Making sure that's as square as possible, guys, okay, because this is going to form the basic kind of shape of our frog. So quick recap before I go on to the next step. I've folded my paper into half lengthways. I've then taken the top corner and folded that down to create these kind of right angle triangles at the top of my piece of paper. The next step, before I go on to step number 4, is I'm then just going to fold that downwards and kind of flatten that out and then open it up again so that we've got this kind of almost a Union Jack symbol on the top half of our piece of paper. This bottom half still needed, but for the time being, you should just have this kind of symbol here. For those of you that are more that are better at following instructions, having been able to see them on a screen, I'm just going to share that again with you guys there. So you can see I've folded in half lengthways. I've folded the 2 corners down, and then I've folded the whole half top section down in order to create this kind of Union Jack idea at the top of my piece of paper. Okay. So the next step is we're going to move on to step number 4, which would be to fold the paper at the sides, bringing these points to the center line. And on the image on step 4, guys, you can see that we're grabbing these 2 corners that we've generated, and we're going to bring them down to that center line. Okay. I'm going to give this a go, and I'm going to show you guys that on my visualizer so you can follow along with me. Okay. So again, let's grab that corner there, and I'm going to bring that down to where my other finger is here. I've already got that line, which is super useful, but it seems that I need to bring both sides down. Okay, so that's fine. Bringing that side down there. I'm then going to do the exact same thing for this other edge here. bringing that one down as well. So now I've kind of got this big flappy bit at the top. But I've just brought both of those corners in. I'll do it one more time more clearly, hopefully. Bringing both of those corners in to the middle with a pinch like that. And I should now have this big tall bit sticking out at the top. Now what I need to do is the kind of same, but the opposite to the top section. I'm going to bring that down and flatten that back onto my page, making sure we're using all of those creases, if possible, that we generated earlier to help us with this folding. There we go. And that looks like it worked. One more time, bringing in these two side corners to the center and then flattening this top section on top. Okay. So what's next? Well, our frog is starting to take shape. You guys should be able to start seeing its actual head or face. The next step is to give it some legs. Okay. So for its legs, guys, I'm just going to take, we've got some flaps here that we can use that aren't stuck. We're going to take that and bring that to the top at the front, folding that kind of in, halving this right angle triangle into a separate right angle triangle or segment within. And the same to this side again, guys, taking that front flappy bit and dragging that to the front of this frog. So now I've got the frog's two front legs. And it's starting to take form. I can start to see where my frog is at. Okay, next, let's take these edge pieces that I've got. And again, using this central line as a guide, I'm just going to fold this in halfways into this central line on each side. Again, doing the same there. And we're nearly finished, guys. This is nearly a complete frog. Just to give you guys a little bit of a further bit of help, I'm just going to once again share the screen. And if you guys are watching the visualizer, you should be able to see in the top right, me just recommit these steps. So starting, having completed step number 4, which was to fold these corners in and flatten this down. Step 5 would be to bring the legs up to the front, like so. And then step 6 here would be to bring these sections inwards so that we end up with this kind of arrow, this arrow shape. Okay. Now finally, guys, nearly done. Last thing we're going to do is just make the frog's back legs so that this thing can hop. Okay. I'm just going to kind of choose where I think is appropriate to fold this bottom section up towards the face, even though we're actually looking at his tummy at the moment. I'm going to bring the legs up to about there. That seems appropriate-ish. And I've just folded that half kind of in towards it. Actually, on my instructions, it says bring it right up to that bottom edge there. So let's do as I'm told. Let's bring it up to that bottom edge there. Okay, so now you've got this bottom section you've folded up to the corners or base of this triangle. And then finally, guys, we're just going to bring that back down to the bottom again to create the back legs of this frog. Okay, so I took this section, folded it up to the base of the triangle, refolded it back down, and there I am. And that is a complete frog. Well, how is that a complete frog, Michael? Here it is. Let's bring it back round the right way round. You can place that onto your desk, put it on its feet. It's got its two front legs. It's got its back legs. You can kind of push down its bum and it should jump. And actually, let's give this frog some eyes. Bring it to life a little bit. And obviously you can decorate these things, guys, and add your own kind of spots or warts or whatever to make this frog come to life. Does a frog have nostrils? I don't know. Perhaps it does. There you go. The mine's got some nostrils now. But that is how you guys can create your frogs. Happy days. Right, so we've got a few things so far, haven't we? We've got this boat, we've got the frog, we've got the hat, we've got our paper airplanes that hopefully you guys haven't thrown into any water. What's next? What's next for us? Again, all we're practicing here, guys, isn't just origami, but it's the practice of following specific sets of instructions in order to solve an overall goal or problem. Okay. I hope you guys can see that those last sets of steps we followed down here, and that you should have something that looks similar to either what you can see on my visualizer or what you can see on the screen on the presentation. Now, can we create a flowchart as a set of instructions for us to be able to produce this particular frog? Well, again, like you did with your paper planes, guys, absolutely you can produce a flowchart that helps us to define how to create this frog. However, for the time being, guys, as much as I'd like to see you produce that in your time so that you can take a photograph of it and upload it onto the link below the YouTube video, onto our Dropbox, I'd love to see what you guys have created, either taking photographs of the origami that you've created so far, or taking photographs of your flowcharts and your notes on sequence selection and iteration. So you can show me what you've done. Just coming back to sequence selection and iteration, which is so important as the three kind of fundamental pillars of anything to do with algorithms of following steps. We can say that whilst making this frog, we were following a sequence of instructions starting at the beginning and ending at the end. It was really important that we did this in a specific order. We weren't able to create the back legs, for example, before we created the front legs. Okay, these had to be made first. Selection, was there at any point that we made a particular decision? Well, yes, there was. We had to keep making decisions on whether our creases were appropriate enough to then continue on to the next step. We had to essentially make an evaluation or decision every time that we finished a particular step to make sure that we can then move on to the next step, that the next step is ready. And was there any iteration? Well, actually, guys, I'd argue that there was a repetition. Every time that we repeated a particular instruction for one side of our design, we then iterated that and repeated that again, the same set of instructions for the other side, because this is a symmetrical design. We almost iterated or repeated every single instruction that we did as we went through and produced our frog. Now, can we take what we've learned so far, guys, and apply that to what might be the more challenging of all of our different characters to make today? What I'd like to introduce you all to now is creating this pelican or crane, and this should be something that lots of you have seen before. It's often one that we see in movies that people create with origami, and we're going to see how we can apply sequence selection and iteration to us creating this pelican. Okay. Now, before we continue, you can see on the instructions on your screen, this actually does require a square piece of paper. Okay. So before we continue and do anything else, I'm going to have to make sure that the piece of paper that I'm using is a square piece of paper and not a rectangular piece of paper. Okay. So the easiest way that I think to do that can be, if you guys have a ruler, that helps, but you don't need a ruler. If you've got scissors, that helps, but you don't need scissors. I'm basing this on just the idea that you've done what I've asked, and you've gone only to get a piece of paper, some pieces of paper and a pen. What I'm going to do, guys, is take two of my A4 sheets. Let's just grab a different color so it's easier to see. Take two of my A4 sheets of paper, and let's just lay one on top of the other, meeting the corners of both, but with one landscape and one portrait. So you should have this shape at the bottom. Okay. What that's going to enable us to do, guys, quite easily is just fold this bottom layer upwards over top of that piece that we have on top of it, like so, and make a really well scored line there, guys, using your nail to push that down against your surface. I can take that away now, this piece, put that to one side. Now what I've got is a square piece of paper. However, it does obviously still have this flap on it. What I'm going to do, guys, is fold it both ways multiple times and then try and tear that off neatly. If you have a ruler, this job is easier. If you have scissors, this job is even easier. In fact, if you have a ruler, guys, you can just measure the width of this piece of paper is 21 centimeters. So hopefully the length of this should now be about 21 centimeters. Mine's slightly too big, but that's absolutely fine. Back and forth, folding, scoring. You're breaking down the fibers of this piece of card or paper as you fold it back and forth on itself, like trying to snap a pencil or a branch. And then if you've done that enough times back and forth, guys, you've weakened it enough to hopefully then be able to rip these apart. Happy days. Square piece of paper. Again, use whichever method you prefer, guys. I'm just going to give you a minute to catch up with that single instruction on creating a square piece of paper for yourselves. Just to reiterate, if anyone got confused or lost during that, if I take another rectangular piece, I can measure it to make sure that it's 21 centimeters by 21 centimeters. Or I could just simply lay another piece of A4 on top at the opposite angle, lay that into the top corner so it's all straight, and then take that line that is left over and fold that so that I then generate this square piece of paper for myself, okay? And again, guys, I'm just going to repeat that process because it doesn't hurt to have two pieces of squared paper for myself so that I can make two of these birds. This time, guys, I'm just going to use my ruler to help. I don't have to keep folding back and forth as much. I use my ruler as a means to rip that against, which is a lot quicker. That's why your teachers love you having rulers on you. They're useful. Okay. Now, let's have a quick look at these steps whilst some of you at home get your squared paper ready. Let's have a quick overview of our algorithm before we begin to perform it. Okay. So what have we got? We've got starting folds. It's all essentially diagonal folds this time, guys. We're just going to crack on and see what happens, all right? So again, I'm going to be using these instructions. I'd like you to follow along with me as much as possible. I will be sharing this screen at points so that you guys can have a overview of where we should be at, okay? So the first task, guys, is to fold this down, this rhombus shape that we've got, fold this in half so that the longest line from corner to corner has been folded in half. Let's try that. Again, I've never done this before, so bear with. I thought I'd put myself in the same situation or position as you. Happy days, there we go. We can now see where the center of our rhombus is. Now what I need to do, guys, is take this outside corner and fold it into the center line, like so. So let's take that center line that we've just created, use that as our guide, and take those corners, folding them up, creasing well into that center line. Do the same for the other corner. You should end up with an image or shape that looks more similar to a kite. It's a bit fiddly, this one. I think it's going to be more challenging, but you're going to learn how to do the pelican or the crane, which I think is pretty cool. Happy days. So I've taken those two corners this time and I've folded them into the center. Next step, guys, is to do it again. To take these corners and fold them into the center. This is going to be more challenging this time because it's going to be more finer detail, but let's give it a go. Let's take that, fold it into the center, creasing down the line. The bottom may end up a little bit messy, but it's okay. We'll see what happens. I think that's going to be the beak. Let's bring that up to the top. And for this side, do the same. Bring that corner piece and bring that up to the top. Fold that into the center. I hope you guys are getting on okay at home with this. This is more tricky, but that's the reason it's our last one today. And then hopefully you should have something that looks like that. Okay. Next step, okay. Now that we've got these folds that we've folded in half twice and brought into the center. We're going to just turn this upside down so that we haven't got any exposed folds. We've just got a lovely kind of image of a really thin kite. Okay. Now, we've turned the model over. We're going to fold the bottom corner up to the top corner and crease it really, really well. So let's take this bottom corner, guys, and bring it up to the top corner here. We've ended up with a irregular pentagon. There we go. So I've brought the bottom corner and folded it upwards towards the top corner. And now, again, quite a tricky fold to do, guys, but bear with, and I'll go back to my screen in a sec. Now fold that in half. So we end up with something that looks, doing that as carefully as possible, like that. Okay, and that's where we are at this point. Just have a quick recap, guys, of where we are. We've folded in the top corners. We've then folded in the outside corners into the center line and creased well. We've then folded into the center once again to create this kind of cone or kite shape. We then turned it over and folded the bottom corner to the top one. And then we've folded that into half. We're nearly there. Okay. We've taken that bottom section, folded that up, and then folded it into half. Okay. Now, turn it sideways so you've got the longest edge flat at the bottom, with your pointy bit hopefully on the left and your kind of straight edge over here on the right. What I'm going to do, guys, is grab this inside triangle here. Okay. And I'm going to raise it. Okay, I'm just going to kind of raise that, stretch that outwards. And what that will do is kind of distort the bottom of your origami. But I'm going to bring it to around there. I think that will do. Give it a bit of a push and a squeeze. And we can stop at that point there. Again, a tricky movement there. All I've done is gone to the inside of this shape that we've created, and I've pulled, essentially I've pulled its neck out of its body, and there we go. That's that bit there, okay? And then I'm just gonna kind of push its head down this time, okay? Because this is its head. Just gonna kind of find a position in which I'm happy with that. These are all kind of random creased folds, guys. Okay, they're not neat necessarily, but they should look okay. There you go. I've kind of pulled its beak out, or its head and its beak out there. Just looking one more time at those movements, guys. I'm just going to straighten it out and do it one more time. I'm distorting mine by doing this, but that's okay. I'm just pulling out its neck and then pushing down its head into a kind of beaky shape. There we go. Happy days. Finally, guys, there's only one more thing to do, and it's to take these kind of wings of our pelican and to kind of just fold them out a little bit like this so that they kind of stick out on the edges, and therefore it makes a stronger base for our pelican to sit at. And there we go. That is a finished pelican, I think. Just going to recap, guys, one more time the screen so you guys can see exactly what the steps were, which are important to evaluate, guys, are algorithms that we've just followed. And again, for those people that want to work in the gaming industry, absolutely essential set of skills that we've just gone through. However, for those people not particularly interested in working in the gaming industry, we've made some beautiful models today. We've made some lovely pelican. Lovely frog, yeah, a boat and a hat that looks great. There's no doubt about that. So, guys, let's just have a look at what hopefully our objectives were for today's task and if we've met them. So, have we learned how to design and use flowchart algorithms? Well, I hope so, guys. After this session, please do take photographs of your models but also do take photographs of any of the flowchart algorithms that you've produced today, and do click on the link below the YouTube video to upload them onto the Dropbox. Okay, I'd love to see what you guys have created. Or after the session, if you feel inspired, go away, do some research on different origami models and produce a different model and a different flowchart to go along with that model. I'd like you to have understood the core shapes used in flowchart design, okay? The fact that we've got terminators for starts and ends, we've got processes as normal rectangle boxes for doing things, and we've got rhombuses as decision boxes for making decisions. And I hope that you guys at least have been able to take away from today how to make a variety of different origami models that you guys can then practice and refine and play with more in your spare time. Really, really fantastic hobby, origami, and you can get as complex as you want. There's some fantastic things that people make using origami practices. So give it a go. Okay. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this Friday session for Digital Schoolhouse on producing origami using algorithms. And I'll look forward to seeing you all next week for our final 3 sessions on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for doing something we call Eco Gamer, which is designing the kind of branding and advertising campaign, etc., for a computer game. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.